Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. It's 1090 Jake, man. I'm rocking with y'all, y'all rocking with me. And for this video, we're gonna be speaking on a potential serial killer that targeted the homeless and shot them while they were asleep. March 3rd, 2022, it was 4 a.m. when police officers in Washington, D.C. responded to the sound of gunfire, finding a man suffering multiple gunshot wounds in the 1100 block of New York Ave. 5 days later, at 1:21 a.m., another man was found shot on 8th Street and in stable condition. Both men luckily survived. Both shooting locations were only 5 minutes away from one another, but the two random acts of violence were deemed just that, random. 24 hours passed since the second shooting. It was March 9th, 2:54 a.m. A member of the Metropolitan Police Department was in the 400 block of New York Ave, an area heavily populated by the homeless, with shelters and service centers operating throughout the day as camping tents lined the streets at night. While patrolling the area, the officer observed a tent on fire. Calling it in, DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene, extinguishing the blaze before making a gruesome discovery. A dead, burnt man was found inside of the makeshift home. What many would assume was a deadly misfortune, an autopsy report would tell a different story. The victim was found to have suffered multiple stab wounds and multiple gunshot wounds before being set on fire. This was the third early morning attack on a homeless man in 7 days. March 12th, 3 days since the homeless attacks in DC, it was 4:30 in the morning. A 38-year-old homeless man sleeping on a cold street in Manhattan as a bullet was fired into his arm. 90 minutes later, gunshots were fired, but would go unreported. A man lay dead in a sleeping bag for the next 11 hours before being discovered. A 911 call went out, officers arrived, and it was determined he was shot to death in his sleep as bullets pierced his neck and skull. Speaking with the homeless in the immediate area, few told officers they heard gunshots around 6 a.m. When asked why they didn't initially report it, some stated they couldn't afford cell phones, while others knew minding your business was key to surviving the streets of New York. Similarities between all shootings resulted in law enforcement agencies from New York and Washington to align with the ATF in a joint investigation. A surveillance video from DC revealed an unmasked person of interest walking in the area of the first homeless shooting. A second video, this time from New York, would show a masked man looking around for potential witnesses before stepping on a homeless man, pushing him with his foot as his sleeping bag rocked. The man either remained asleep or pretended to be, assuming he was being bothered by police. That's when the masked man drew his weapon and started firing. The cold-blooded execution shook the city as word started to spread of a possible serial killer lurking the streets for potential victims. Multiple still shot photos were released capturing the suspect's face. In both New York shootings, he eerily moved the same way, scouting his target, walking the block once to assure himself no one else was around, then committing the shooting with deadly intentions. Speaking with surviving victims, it was determined all victims were asleep at the time of the attack. 22 caliber shell casings were discovered at all 5 shooting scenes from New York to DC, and ballistic evidence would show all bullets were fired from the same weapon, pushing law enforcement further into believing they were looking for one man. A reward of up to $65,000 was being offered, and after still shot pictures were released, both New York and Washington police would receive tips, including a name. A senior law enforcement official would identify the suspect wanted for 2 murders and 3 attempts as 30-year-old Gerald Brevard III. Unknowingly being stalked, the tables were now turned as Gerald walked across the street towards a gas station in DC. That's when ATF agents exited multiple vehicles with guns drawn as Gerald attempted a run but quickly gave up. Wearing similar clothes to those seen in Manhattan surveillance videos, Gerald was searched but no weapon was found. His criminal record dated back to 2013 with charges of theft, assault, burglary, drug possession, and traffic violations. In 2019, Gerald pled guilty to assault with a deadly weapon and was held and evaluated at a psychiatric hospital where he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and found competent to stand trial. In 2020, Gerald would be arrested in Virginia for burglary and abduction and later sentenced to 24 months on an amended charge of assault and battery. 11 of those months were to be served incarcerated, while the rest would be carried out on probation. Apparently, he'd attacked a woman, but lack of fingerprint evidence and her being unable to positively identify him led to his reduced charges. Gerald's father reached out to the news, speaking on behalf of his son.
I just have many different mixed emotions, sad, angry, disappointed, trying to process it. I'm sorry and feel bad for the victims, as well as my son. He talked in the third person. He was very paranoid. He thought people was following him.
A motive is yet to be determined as to why Gerald carried out these attacks, and while New York falls under state jurisdiction, Washington, D.C. falls under federal, meaning the murder committed in D.C. has the potential of becoming a federal death penalty case. Now, I can already somewhat predict that mental health is gonna be major in this case, because what would possess a man to just kill random sleeping people? I highly doubt he's gonna get the death penalty. I can almost guarantee he's gonna get life in prison. And you're gonna have the conspiracy theorists saying he was made to do this, paid to do this, whatever, whatever. You're gonna have the other people that are like, fuck him, fry him. There's no benefit to keeping him alive. I don't know, I'm kind of in between the two. If he is that mentally ill, like I've said in other cases I've covered, the responsibility falls on the people that know he's that mentally fucking ill. I don't know how people can be so fucked in the head that they have the freedom to move around in society as if they're not. You know what I mean? It's like, you should have a caretaker, a caregiver, somebody that is in control of the majority of your life and the major decision making. And that way, you're constantly under surveillance to where something like this can't happen. But not only that, he was apparently on probation, wanted for violating probation, and somehow the state never picked up on how sick in the head he really was. Or he just wasn't that sick in the head, decided to do these things, and should face the maximum punishment. But what do y'all think? In y'all's honest opinion, would you be comfortable with somebody being sentenced to live out the rest of their life after so cold-heartedly taking life? Do you think that's fair? Just put him in prison? Maybe you're against the death penalty? Or do you think because he has an issue, he should be sent to a psychiatric hospital and maybe even have the potential of being released one day? Me, I'm completely fucking against that. Because at the end of the day, what he did is no different to me than harming a baby, an animal, anything else. He literally targeted people who were alone by themselves. Most likely at the worst moment in life. They're homeless, sleeping on the street. It's fucking freezing outside. And he killed them in their sleep. And we don't even know if the man in the sleeping bag was actually asleep. Someone's nudging him, probably thinks it's the cops, thinks if he just remains quiet, they're gonna stop fucking with him, holding his breath in, trying not to move his body, and then he gets shot in the skull, shot in the throat. I can't imagine it. Just like I can't imagine being asleep, having a dream, then all of a sudden, the dream turns off. I'm dead, I'm no longer alive. And we don't know what happens once you die. But that person will never know what happened because they never woke up. Let me know y'all thoughts and comments in the comment section. It's 1090 Jake. I'm rocking with y'all. Y'all rocking with me. Till next time.